First and foremost, all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaKakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Stone. Peace and blessings to the Akim out there pushing this word in all sincerity and all truth. I'm just coming back from, a walk. I went, to get breakfast, so decided to, make this walk a little bit more productive. I've had a few articles lined up, for a couple of days now, just to give some update and what's happening with the MOTB system that's being built out, and a thought occurred to me, while I was preparing, that maybe some people, some brothers, some other people that are watching these videos probably ask or wonder, why do we keep, doing these videos about, every little update that's happening with the system? Why do we constantly bring out the same precepts, bring out articles talking about CBDCs being implemented, digital ID being implemented? It's like, the record is scratched and you just keep, playing over the same part over and over and over again. But the main reason that we do it, is a watchman. The job of a watchman is to watch first and foremost, as to constantly warn. And secondly, for our benefit, because if we don't stay in these scriptures, if we don't continually watch what's happening in the news and bring it out and do these lessons, then we will slip. These things will slip from us. Matter of fact, let me get that, to start with. All right. It wasn't on the list, but the spirit is having me bring it out. So let me just bring it out. All right, because it's important for us to continually go over these things, that we don't let them slip from us. All right. So this is I believe it's Hebrews chapter 2. All right, bear with me here. All right. There, Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1. It says, therefore, we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. All right. So we should constantly be reminding ourselves of the things that we already know, because if you have the mindset that, oh, I know the breakdown of the mark of the beast, I know that, the CBDC and all these things are being implemented to bring about, the system wherein, the microchip is going to, be implemented. If you say, okay, I know all of that already, I don't need to follow up on the news every time some different, update happens, I don't need to do a video. You know what happens then? Then you're not as spiritually active. Then the distractions of the world, the anxieties of the world, whether it be your family, your job, or just life in general, social media, whatever it is, starts to eat away at your attention, starts to eat away at your mindset, and it starts to replace your thoughts day by day, to where these things slip from you, where you stop watching, right? And things, come upon you unawares, right? So it's not enough to just know it now and then say, okay, I know it, and that's it. It's to keep knowing it, keep reminding yourself of it. Luke 21 verse 34 says, and take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, which is excess, drunkenness, which can go into literal drunkenness or spiritual drunkenness, right? And the cares of this life, and that care goes back to the word anxiety, right? Worries, the cares of this life, and that they come upon you unawares, right? For as a snare shall it come upon all of them that dwell upon the face of the earth. And then it says, watch ye therefore, right? And this watching, it's not a passive action, right? Just like I did a lesson the other day about learning and becoming a new person. Learning is an active, lifelong process. You can't be a passive member of the truth, right? So this watching, when he says watch ye therefore and pray always, it's an active process. When you watch, you see what's going on in the news and you report it. You do a lesson, you report it. Even if that lesson is repetitive, you do it to remind both yourself and the listeners, right? And it says to what? To pray always, right? To pray that when these days come, right, you are protected. Just like, the last video I did with the image of the tree, the huge tree, and the grass that was underneath the shadow of the tree was nice and green and lush, but the grass that was not under the tree's shadow was just burnt out and brown. You want to pray that you are under the shadow of the Almighty when these things come to pass. So you watch, therefore, and you continually pray that you are kept in the truth, that you are sustained by the Spirit, right? And that you are ultimately delivered when these things come to pass, right? That you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. You want to be able to stand before Yahweh Shai and hear him say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. You know, you have done that which is required of you. Inherit thou the kingdom prepared, by my Father, right? So let's get it. So if you haven't known, right, the digital euro is the EU's CBDC, and they have voted to move forward with the practical implementations of it now. It's no more an exploratory thing. It's now going to be practically implemented. So the first phase, right, is going to be the trials, or what they call it, not trials, it's pilot programs, right? So it says the ECB, which is the European Central Bank, which is going to be issuing the digital currency because CBDCs are issued by a central bank, right? It says ECB, the European Central Bank, selects 36 payment providers for digital euro pilot as the project moves ahead, right? So these things it's not slowing down. These things are happening. These things are being implemented daily, right? Our life is about to change, right? Then we have South Korea. South Korea moves ahead with their CBDC pilot program, right, to move into existing banks, right? So that's another up. Yeah, what's happening with this thing now, right? So that's another update. South Korea is moving forward with theirs. Then we have Russia. Russia says that their digital ruble, which is their CBDC, is ready for a September 1 launch, right? And it says, look here what it says here. Despite weak public demand. But here's the thing. They know a lot of people don't want it. But you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna introduce it still, build the infrastructure around it, and then once they build the infrastructure around it, what people are using now is just gonna be obsolete. People are gonna be forced to use it anyways, right? So I have here a conversation. Let me just go back to this conversation that I was having, with the yeah, here we go, with the chat, right? And then what I wanted to do was just ask it, about, digital euro being implemented in the context of, you know, the UN Sustainable Development Goals and all of that, right? And I wanted to highlight specifically this last section here because one of the ways they got the go-ahead votes for the digital euro is they made some concessions. Like they said that it's going to exist alongside cash. It's not going to replace cash, right? They're going to be strict privacy laws, holding caps, meaning you can't just withdraw all your money from traditional banks and just put it into a CBDC wallet, which would be a digital run on the bank. So they're going to put laws in place to prevent that, all that good stuff. So it says that these are politically mandatory to build the infrastructure without triggering massive public bank backlash or banking collapses, right? But it says once the digital rails, which is the digital ID system, tokenized asset markets, which we've been going into, right, are fully implemented, are fully operational and interconnected, the baseline of the economy shifts permanently, right, making older physical systems obsolete by default. So even if there is weak public demand right now. They don't care. They're building out the system. And once that system is fully built out, fully interconnected, right, fully operational, there's gonna be a permanent shift within the economy itself. What you're used to is just, it's gonna seem as if it's overnight, but it's building right now. It's building right now, and brothers are reporting on it, you know? And people who are not paying attention, it's gonna seem as if it happened overnight. You understand? But it didn't. It took its time, and it was, slowly implemented, phase by phase, and built around you. Right? No, this article is, you know, really, really good article. It has you know, quite a bit of information in it. I'm gonna bring out as much as I can, without making this video too long, right? So it was written by Martin Armstrong, right, in June 2026, right? So just about a month ago. And it says digital ID, the lockdown they never abandon. It says governments never abandon idea once they discover it increases control. They simply wait until the public is distracted, like what's happening right now. What's happening right now? The World Cup, right? That's distracting the world. You understand? And then they repackage it under a different name, right? The lockdowns may be over, but the mentality that produced them never disappeared. It merely evolved. The UK is now moving towards a digital identity system tied to smartphones to gov.uk wallet and digital credentials. The politicians sell it as convenience. They always do. It is easier, it is faster, it is more secure. Those are the promises made every time the government seeks to consolidate information and authority into a single system. What begins as a voluntary tool, right? Because when the UK first pushed the digital ID, right? They pushed it as mandatory, and there was a huge backlash. Millions of people signed petitions like saying, F off, we're not doing this. But then what happened? They made a strategic retreat, and they came back months later, and the king himself says, "My ministers will move forward with a voluntary digital ID system." Right? So it's gonna be voluntary at first, gradually becomes expected, then preferred, then required. It's gradualism. Because once the digital system is completely, fully functional around you, right, it's going to replace what you're used to. The traditional system is just going to be replaced automatically, right? It says before long, participation in normal life depends on compliance, right? So that no man might buy or sell, save either at the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Right? It says the concern has never been the technology itself. The danger is the inevitable expansion of purpose. Today, it is proving your age, identity, or right to work. Tomorrow, it becomes the preferred method for accessing benefits, right? Taxes, banking services, healthcare, travel services, voting, countless other activities, right? Let's check in here. So continuing now, it says every government insists it will never go too far. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates that once infrastructure exists, future politicians inherit powers they never had to build themselves. Right. So I'll put the link for this article, because it's a really really good read. I'll get the section too. It says what few people appreciate is how quickly a digital identity can become the master key for everyday life. Once your government issues digital credentials are stored on your phone, they can be linked to tax records, healthcare access, benefits, banking verification, travel documents, age verification, employment eligibility, and countless other services. Before long, those who refuse to participate find themselves navigating endless hurdles while everyone else is funneled into a single digital ecosystem. Participation becomes unavoidable. Every crisis then becomes an excuse to add another layer of monitoring, another credential, another requirement, until the smartphone evolves into a digital passport for participation in modern day life. And it's going to transition from the smartphone to an implantable RFID microchip. Ultimately that is the goal, right? This is 2 Corinthians 2 and 11 in the NLT, so that Satan will not outsmart us, for we are familiar with his evil schemes, right? We have to be familiar with it, and we have to constantly remind ourselves how this is coming to pass, right? Next up, woe to them, Micah 2 and 1, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds when the morning is light. They practice it because it is in the power of their hands, right? They are practicing it right now. They're bringing it to pass right now. They're building the infrastructure. And if you don't constantly Remind yourself, if you're not doing videos on it, you're not watching videos on it, you're not looking up news on it, it's gonna come. It's you're gonna forget. You're gonna caught up in your daily life, and it's gonna just happen, and you're gonna be outside the circle. Yo, so hopefully this lesson was edifying.